What's going on YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Season 11 of Apex Legends is well underway, and so is the conversation as to where the meta stands. Now, the other day I talked about what I think the best weapons are this season, link to that one up above, and today I'm back to discuss the actual legends themselves. Now, before we get started, if you enjoyed this content, be sure to let me know down below, leave this video a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And make sure you hit that notification bell if you want to know when more of these videos go live and when I go live right here on YouTube. But without further ado, I'm Brad from Last Call Gaming. Let's tap into it. As we get started here, quick shout out to JE36 on YouTube for creating this template. Now let's dive in. Now the good news is, with the exception of a few outliers, the legend balance right now is stellar. Generally speaking, you can make just about every legend work. Now with that in mind, the new map Stormpoint has given a series of soft buffs and nerfs to a handful of legends. And some legends stand out on their own from the value that just inherently exists in their kit. At the end of the day, it's important to remember that if you like a legend, play that legend. These are just my opinion. So kicking things off for us, we have Ashe, the new kid on the block, and a legend I've been particularly excited about since her announcement. Her kit is very versatile and she launched pretty balanced, depending on how you feel about her passive, that is. But generally speaking, she hasn't really broken the game in any sort of meaningful way. That being said, her versatility extends to a multitude of playstyles. She can be both very aggressive and extremely defensive because her ultimate is so useful. While her tactical leaves a little bit to be desired, it's still a strong addition to her kit. Her pick rate started very high, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. And for that reason, Ashe is going to kick us off in S tier. Moving on to Bangalore. Bangalore has suffered a little bit with no real meaningful changes, and the spread out nature of the new map takes away a lot of her efficacy. That being said, we are still going to see World's Edge again at some point this season, and Bangalore mains will continue to run us over whether we like it or not. While she's not the strongest pick on this list, she's still fairly solid. And with that in mind, I'm willing to put Bangalore in B tier. Moving on to Bloodhound, someone else who hasn't seen very many meaningful changes recently. And there's honestly not that much to say about them. Bloodhound's kit is still very solid. If anything, the size and scale of Stormpoint mixed with the amount of foliage and caves makes their tracking abilities and scans much more valuable. While it can be extremely hard to differentiate enemies from wildlife in certain situations, Bloodhound's intel is almost more prevalent than ever. And for that reason, they are still in the spot they have been in for season after season. Bloodhound is S tier. Next, we have the stinky boy Caustic. After Caustic's buffs last season, he saw significantly more playtime and usability. His gas is once again scary again, and very easy to control situations with. While bunkering is fairly difficult to do in the current movement-based meta, Caustic can take a significantly more aggressive play style than a lot of other bunker legends. Combined with the number of choke points and surprise little gotcha spots on Stormpoint, his gas traps might be more effective than they've ever been. And for that reason, Caustic's not the strongest, but I am gonna put him in A tier. Crypto. If you've watched my streams at all ever, you'll know that I'm not the biggest fan of Crypto. I can already hear all the Crypto mains screaming, "He's the best intel legend in the game! I'm the best Crypto player. If you play him correctly, he's phenomenal." I agree with you. Crypto can be a good legend in the right hands, and I've said that for season after season, but he is incredibly difficult to execute properly. And I think Stormpoint really hurts him because Stormpoint is so widespread that his drone is more often dead before it even sees an enemy. Oftentimes you'll even hear the Crypto drone before it even sees you. Combined with the fact that the only way to make his playstyle work is if you are calling the shots, he suffers a fair bit this season. Now he is scheduled for a complete rework, but we have no set date for when that's going to be. And until that time, I'm actually gonna drop Crypto down to C tier. I want to emphasize something. Crypto can be good, but compared to the inherent value that other legends on this list have, he just doesn't cut it right now. Next, we have the Australian Heartbreaker. My Australian viewers, I'm very sorry for that accent. Fusey, and that one. Fuse saw some massive buffs last season, and since those buffs, he's been a very strong contender. The addition of intel to his kit, and more damage, allows him to control spaces a lot more easily. And generally speaking, he's much more defensive now than he was originally perceived to be. Fortunately, he's significantly less of a meme these days, and there is a lot of value that can be had from his kit. Not to mention his passive ability of stacking grenades may be more valuable on Stormpoint than it's ever been. Fusey's just in a generally okay spot right now, and I don't have anything really bad to say about him. He's just a little bit above average, and for that reason I have to put him in B tier, mainly because he has some value still, but there's more value to be gained from other legends. Our next legend is the thick boy, Gibraltar, Gibby. Gibby's another one who's retained his strength season after season after season, having seen no meaningful changes in multiple seasons. His basic kit of a bubble, a gun shield, and fortify make him very accessible to new players, and his skill ceiling is extremely high, given the number of Galaxy Brain bubble plays that you can muster. I don't have much to say about him here. He's still thick, he's still useful. The existence of Stormpoint only emphasizes that a little bit, and for that reason, Gibby stays in S tier. Moving on to Space Mommy. Horizon still feels like she's in a very good place, despite the fact that her mortal enemy is now in the game with her. With the amount of verticality changes on Stormpoint, a lot of of credit is given to the movement-based legends who can take height quickly. In fact, most of them get a bonus because of the existence of the map. Horizon is no exception. She's still one of the best height takers in the game, and her passive really comes into play on Storm Point specifically. If done correctly, her soft landing completely negates the hard fall from the gravity cannons, and you can yeet yourself across the map. That particular boost solidifies her as one of the best movement legends in the game again, and I'm super happy about that fact. Her ult is still strong and combos well with a lot of other things. She has a lot of inherent value in her kit, and for that reason, Space Mommy is going in A tier. Our musical medic, Lifeline. Lifeline's never really been the same since she lost her res shield. That being said, tap resing is such a powerful utility, and while some people may disagree with me, I actually think she's a sleeper pick and stronger than people give her credit for. She's not the strongest legend on this list by a mile, but with the spread out nature of the new map and what feels like a rather thin loot pool, her care package has more value than I think it's ever had, at least in recent seasons. With the number of hiding spots that you're afforded on Storm Point, mixed with the ranges a lot of these fights take place, there are a lot of free reses that you can get if timed appropriately. And for that reason, I'm gonna have to put Lifeline in B tier. Like I said, not the strongest, but still has her value. LOBA. Last season, I made a joke by giving LOBA her own tier. I'm not gonna do that this time around, because my opinions on LOBA have actually changed significantly and substantially this season. Going back to what I said earlier about Horizon and being able to take height and space very quickly, LOBA's Q has felt better than it ever has. Like many of the other movement-based legends on this list, she's able to take height that you wouldn't otherwise be able to access very quickly. And that is very, very, very powerful on the new map. Her ultimate suffers a little bit because the loot is so spread out on Storm Point that a lot of times it doesn't really encompass much. But it can stock you up in a pinch, and her passive is still fairly useful when your team is searching for a few things. Her movement alone is very strong this season, and that is enough to put her in A tier for me. Up next, we have everyone's favorite comedic sad boy, Mirage. Mirage has also not seen any meaningful changes this season, and minus the handful of cool things you can pull off with his clones and the gravity cannons, I'm still not impressed by the things that he is able to accomplish. I get it, invisible res is cool, and with the way some of the battles are shaking out this season, maybe you get away with it. But I stand by what I said last season, where he still doesn't bring that much to the table. At the end of the day, his playstyle is rather selfish. And while I know that there are good Mirage players out there, you are basically better off with almost every other legend on this list. And so I stand by what I said last season. Mirage is our first entry into F tier. Sorry, Mirage mains. Maybe one day he'll get there. Who's to say? Octavio Silva, Octane. My main, my speedy boy. Octane has been impacted by the existence of Ashe this season. So much so to the point that I've actually been maining Ashe lately because she fills a similar role. Don't get me wrong, Octane's jump pad is still awesome. Octane's stim, still super fun. As a whole, Octane is still a great legend to have on your team and is still super fun to play. And in terms of accessibility, he's one of the most accessible movement legends in the game. There's never really gonna be a situation where you're in the wrong for picking Octane, or in a bad situation having an Octane on your team. He's able to take height very, very easily, and he can get your team out of some bad situations. There's also a movement tech you can pull off by throwing a jump pad at the base of a gravity cannon that you're about to land on, thus expanding the distance you're able to rotate on Storm Point. He's all around still very useful. However, I think Ashe is just a little bit better because she can subtly rotate your team to get the upper hand in a fight. But he's still a great legend, and while I don't actually think he's S tier this season, he's still solidly an A tier. Ashe's boyfriend, Pathfinder. Everyone's favorite adorable happy robot boy. Pathfinder is sort of in a similar situation. His rotation ability is great. He's able to take height very easily. The intel on where the next ring is going to be is always good to have, especially with the size of Storm Point. And overall, I don't really have a lot to say. He hasn't seen any changes, at least not yet. He's still strong. A lot of Pathfinder mains out there. Always good to have on your team. I don't really have any complaints. If you're new to the game, this is a legend you should consider picking up. Fairly low skill floor, very high skill ceiling, and just generally all around very good. And for that reason, Pathfinder's A tier. Next we have Rampart, who I'm a little bit torn on. She's extremely fun to play, but with how movement heavy the game is, she's just not there. Yes, you can walk around with Sheila now, and there are certain circumstances where you have high ground and choke points that you can just funnel bullets down, and that's super helpful. But, and it's a big but, for all of Sheila's strength, it's so easy to outplay. Sheila is a significantly better ultimate these days than it was in seasons past. But with that said, all it takes is someone with decent aim and a G7 to completely end that push. And realistically, there are just so many more effective picks that you can choose on this list. If you enjoy playing Rampart, go for it. I enjoy playing Rampart from time to time. But in terms of viability and accessibility, you have better options. And so I have to put Rampart in C tier. She's better, but she's not there yet. Revenant. Revenant has seen a bit of a resurgence with the existence of Ashe, much in the same way that you can combine Octane's jump pad with Revenant's totem, you can combine Revenant's totem with Ashe's phase breach, and his ability to climb and take height is very much appreciated on Stormpoint. But overall, there's not a whole lot going on with his kit right now. Silence is still a decent ability, but the new map is so widespread that if you hit it, it takes time to push on it. And so for that reason, Revenant is okay, and I've got to put him in B tier. Next we have SEER, who got nerfed into the ground after his launch. But you know what? Hot take is he's still fairly strong. The ability to have any idea at all where your next enemy is extremely useful, especially on Stormpoint. Now this may change as the season shakes out and we start to learn more and more about the map, but I do honestly believe that SEER is still very strong. And he is relatively accessible overall. He's not quite strong enough to put in A tier, but I am willing to put him in B tier. Valk has seen an extreme value boost this season. Her passive is one of the most valuable things currently on Stormpoint. And with jump towers being largely removed from the map, her ability to literally become a jump tower is more valuable than ever. There's not much more that needs to be said about it. If you haven't played Valk yet or haven't picked her up, get on it. She will reward you greatly for it. And for that reason, Valk is now S tier this season. WATTSON. WATTSON. It's a WATTSON season. It really is. The WATTSON mains rejoice. She's finally in the meta. The massive buffs she's received have skyrocketed her. I had her as a legend who needed help for the last several seasons, and the devs went and did it. People are still figuring out all of the new changes to her kit, and that is going hand in hand with the new map. But her ultimate is so much more useful now, and the bugs have been fixed. And while I don't think she's as strong as Caustic, she's still very solid. And for the first time since I started making these videos, I am finally willing to put WATTSON in A tier. And finally, we have our goth girlfriend Wraith, who everyone thought was going to be replaced by Ashe at the beginning of this season. Well, I'm happy to report that it's not even close. In fact, Wraith and Ashe hold two completely different roles. And in some cases, I actually think Wraith is more aggressive than Ashe. Wraith's ultimate can actually cover significantly more ground than Ashe's can. And while Ashe's portal is more subtle, if you're paying attention, you know exactly where she's going to be. The same can be said for Wraith, but it can be a lot harder to track. Good Wraith players rejoice. She hasn't been replaced. She's still very strong, and in my opinion, she stays in S tier. Now, some of you may find it weird that there ended up being no D tier in this list. And that is because I genuinely believe that the legend balance is very, very good right now. I said the same thing about the weapon balance, but right now, the game balance as a whole is in a very good state. Obviously, there are some outliers. I still think Mirage needs a lot of help, more so than pretty much everybody else on this list. But understand, once again, every single legend on this list can work. It just comes down to how much time you spend learning the legends and the different interactions between legends. So there we go, guys. Like I said at the beginning, these are all my opinions, so if you disagree with me, feel free to let me know down in the comments. Just please keep it classy. But otherwise, thank you guys so very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and until next time, cheers, legends.